Jiro here for Umbra Games with the review of Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age, a PlayStation 4 exclusive. Final Fantasy XII originally hit Western shores back in 2006. This remastered version of it is technically a remaster of Final Fantasy XII International Zodiac Job System, a second edition of the game released only in Japan in 2007. Final Fantasy XII was the first non-spin-off to take place in an existing Final Fantasy world, in this case Ivalice, the land from Final Fantasy Tactics. It's here we find a war heating up with the powerful Arcadian Empire bent on dominating the rest of the world. In 12, you end up with 6 party members, of which you can play 3 at a time, and while you begin with Vaan, a street urchin Sky Pirate wannabe, as soon as you have a 4th member, you can sub him out for others, which really gives this title the feeling that you have a cast of main characters rather than just one. Combat takes place auto-attack RPG style, where you choose your target to attack, and your characters will begin attacking. You can pause the combat at any time to open up a menu to use special abilities or magics or items. As you engage enemies, a blue arcing line will branch from the character of which you issued the order, and when an enemy sees you, their red arcing line will display their target. I remember back then, and even now actually, drawing similarities in that combat system to that of Final Fantasy XI Online, where characters hitting hard or healing heavy will draw what they call aggro, diverting the enemy's attention to them. You can flee from battle by holding R2 and heading for a zone line if you get into too much trouble, but be aware the enemies will be waiting for you if you try to come back in. There are various forms of magics, including the staple white, black, and time magic, and some spells have been added to the normal repertoire and called green magics, like Bubble, which doubles HP, and Oil, which makes sprayed targets more vulnerable to fire. There are also what is known as techniques, which are abilities that don't consume MP, but can have a different cost, and in addition to the usual steal and Liber functionalities, also including reviving one character at the cost of another's HP, or extra damage for sacrificing some hit points as well. Almost every enemy killed grants experience points, which count towards your character's level. As you face weaker enemies as you're stronger, the amount of experience reward will decline, but never quite seem to reach 0. In addition to experience, you also get LP, or license points, from downed enemies, which can be taken to a character's license board, where you can open up the ability to use magics, techniques, receive stat buffs, and every piece of equipment you want a character to wear requires that they have a license to do so as well. Which brings us to one of the biggest differences between this game and the original Final Fantasy XII. Introduced in that International Zodiac Job System version we never received is the presence of 12 jobs, one for every sign of the Zodiac, and each character can equip up to 2. These jobs include White Mage, Black Mage, Time Battle Mage, Knight, Archer, and a few others from the Final Fantasy Tactics universe. Any character can be assigned any combination of 2, but once you pick, you're stuck for the duration of the game. Now, I generally don't like to look at walkthroughs on my first time through a game, and in this case it kind of bit me, as I wanted to experience all of the classes, which left poor Fran with a Machinist-Monk combination that rendered her very nearly completely useless. Balthier's White Mage Archer combo worked really well though. Now for the duration of the main game, I'm gonna guess you can make it through with just about any combo. But if you're a hardcore fan that wants to try and get the Platinum Trophy for this game, where you have to go up against optional bosses that literally take hours to defeat, you may want to plan a little more ahead than I did. It was pretty nice to have a Knight Time Battle Mage combination, where haste could be cast by my tank, in addition to swapping out for a crossbow for some flying enemies. The two-handed katana-wielding Black Mage was also fun in aesthetics, but I don't know, anyway you get my point. Once a license for an item or ability has been obtained, you have to purchase that item or find it in a treasure chest or get it as a quest reward, one piece of equipment for everyone that wants to equip it at a time, or a one-time purchase of a magic or technique that can be used by anyone with it open. Now, you know those games where you have AI companions and you find them doing whatever they want or nothing at all, and you talk out loud to the TV asking what in the world they think they're doing? Final Fantasy XII solved this problem so eloquently, and for some reason this has never been reproduced. I often find myself asking why. Enter the gambit system. It's almost like giving lines of code to each party member that can be changed on the fly. You set a target criteria and an action, you prioritize them, and the characters behave accordingly. For example, with my damage dealers, the first command when I'm trying to get somewhere is attack the target of the leader. So when I'm controlling one of the characters and I engage, they all follow suit instead of randomly attacking everything in the area. When life gets low, you need healed, so you can set up an HP less than 60% cast Cure on your White Mage. Occasionally there are flying enemies that your melee can't handle, so set the Black Mage to cast a spell on a foe that's flying. It's pretty ingenious in my opinion. If a character does something you didn't expect, it's probably just because you have the priority wrong. Additional gambit slots can be opened for each character on the license board, giving you a pretty precise amount of control. You can turn gambits on and off pretty quickly in combat if you need people to stop what they're doing, which was a necessity to have them turned off most of the time when I was in control of a specific character. You can make any character the party leader and controllable at any moment with a touch of up or down on the D-pad. Now, as mentioned, you have 3 of the 6 people in your party in combat at any time, and they can be swapped out on the fly as long as they're not in the middle of an action or targeted by one, more easily noticeable by the text of their name turning red. The quick substitution applies even if they're dead. The world in Final Fantasy XII is very nearly completely open, with a few locked areas hidden behind mission progression. The areas are all a system of connected rooms, with often multiple connections in each area. And you can hit the PS4 touchpad to look at the world map the old-fashioned way, or use the game's new overlay that pops up with the click of the stick. You can cover area very quickly with another addition to the game, a fast-forward option, allowing you to go 2 times or 4 times faster, which includes fighting enemies. So if you need a quick grind for some license points, this option will come in handy. There are orange save crystals, generally 1 per area, which can be used as fast travel points at the cost of a teleport stone, fairly cheap items in certain item shops. There's quite a bit of side content beyond a few little quests scattered here and there. The hunt system lets you grab notices from boards and taverns, from which you find a petitioner requesting a rare monster called a mark to be hunted, and they spawn after quest acceptance somewhere in the world. These battles end up being pretty unique, as the critters will often have some special attack set, and most enrage as they near the end of their HP bar. So if you're looking for a challenge, taking these on at the level they're available can get you there pretty quick. You can get elite marks as you progress further in the game for even more challenges. There are also Espers to be discovered. Final Fantasy XII uses the summons from Final Fantasy Tactics as Espers, instead of the traditional Shiva and Alexander types, which are actually the names of flagships of the Arcadian Empire in this game. Instead, we get Adremelech, Mateus, and the like. Espers have to be conquered in battle before they can be used, and while 5 of them you'll acquire through the story, there are an additional 8 hiding in the remote places of the world. In fact, 2 of them I stumbled across while looking for hunts this time through. Once completed, you can spend points to open them up on one character for summoning, and they can unlock extra abilities depending on which job license board you choose to acquire them on. And you can also join a hunt club about halfway through the game, where you can open increasing tiers of the shop by turning in trophies dropped from randomly popping rare enemies spread all over the world. Some seem to have certain conditions, and some just seem to pop in the normal enemy placeholders as you're roaming the map. Now, a lot of these side quest optional battles seem to more or less require some specific gear and accessory sets. There are some bosses that will just spam status effects, and if you're not immune to them, you'll find yourself devoting a character of the 3 you have to eliminating those, which can get a bit old and frustrating. While it can be fun to figure out some of these combinations to apply to enemy weaknesses, unless you've obtained specific accessories or equipment, you may not know all the options you could have, trying to down difficult enemies without necessary gear. Which, I guess it really isn't a bad thing. Just be prepared if you're planning on jumping in for the platinum. Strap in for a long ride. Graphically, while this isn't looking like the shiny new Final Fantasy XV, the upgraded textures and character models work well in 1080p. I mean, if you don't believe me, just go look at a YouTube video of the PlayStation 2 version of the game. Characters' voices still seem like maybe they were stuck with the compressed audio of the previous version, as characters a lot of times sound like they're talking out of a tin can. And I'm not just talking about the judges talking with their helmets on, because, they were meant to sound that way.
Have you your fill of this?
The full motion video cinematics looked a little dated as well, but were done well enough to not detract from the game at all, and are all very passable. There's a lot of palette switching going on both here and with the original, as I recall, as you'll fight the same model of wolf with slightly different fur patterns, or beastmen with different horns quite a few times in your journey. The bosses, though, are all definitely unique, including some disturbing Esper designs, but there could be a bit more diversity in the average mobs. I think the only real disappointment for me is the expectation of more class-specific abilities with this new job system. The techniques were often repeated across jobs and are fairly generic, so unless you're wielding magic in a character that's specified in a specific color, your knight was doing things like just upping shield block rate, and your melee guys upped their physical attack power, and just nothing special for those that wielded those weapons. This makes it evident that the job boards were added on later, merely very nearly just reclassifying what was on one board to the smaller ones for each. I also think there's definitely a recency effect at play here. I remember playing 12 10 years ago and for some reason was not really getting into the characters, but I did enjoy the combat. It felt to me that Square was losing the ability to write characters that you could care about when you moved from Final Fantasy VI to 7 and 8 and up that way. But coming off the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy and going back to 12, found myself more involved in the characters' struggles this time. Turns out I didn't really remember much of the story at all, and I was definitely more engaged this time around. Now, the last few additions to the Zodiac Age is the reorchestrated soundtrack. If you buy the game new, you can get a redeemable code for the original game soundtrack that you can flip back and forth between on the menu while you're playing the game. Secondly, there's a New Game Plus mode, allowing you to begin the game again at levels you were on completion. Finally is the presence of the Trial mode, which lets you complete the game's pivotal moments, and battles hunting marks and bosses again for various cash and item rewards. The world of Ivalice is giant, with so many places to discover and explore. 12 features a well-written epic with a diverse cast of characters, an intuitive and specialized combat system with the gambits, a good amount of side content that can be very challenging, a new trial mode, reorchestrated soundtrack, with some repeated palette-swapped enemy models but diverse bosses, marks, and rare enemies, a new job system for a more diverse party but with little benefit to the melee folks, and some great new features to this classic like the speed control and map overlay. If you haven't played 12 since it came out, or especially if you've never experienced it, there's a lot here to enjoy. Rated as an auto-attack role-playing game, Final Fantasy XII hits an 81 out of 100 on a true 1 to 100 scale, with 50 being an average game. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. As always, please feel free to hit the subscribe button for new video notifications, or follow me on Twitter @Umbra Games.